Commander Jake Morrison sat in his chair on the bridge of Earth Defense Station Olympus. The station floated in space between Earth and Mars, watching for any danger that might come from the stars. Jake had been doing this job for 5 years. Now, and most days, were quiet. Very quiet. "Sir, I'm getting something strange on the long-range sensors," said Lieutenant Amy Carter from her seat at the communications desk. She was young, maybe 25, with short brown hair and sharp eyes that never missed anything. Jake stood up and walked over to her station. "What kind of strange?" Amy's fingers moved quickly over her controls. "It's a signal, but not like anything we've ever seen before. The computer can't figure out what language it is." "Put it on the main screen," Jake ordered. The big screen at the front of the bridge lit up with lines of text that looked like nothing human. Strange symbols moved across the display, changing and shifting, and suddenly the symbols changed into English words. "People of Earth," the message began. "We are the Galactic Council. We speak for 12 worlds and billions of lives. We need your help." Jake felt his heart start beating faster. Contact with aliens had always been possible, but it had never happened before. He grabbed the nearest phone and called Admiral Paul Wright at Space Command Headquarters. "Admiral, this is Morrison at Olympus. You need to see this right now." While they waited for the Admiral to connect, more text appeared on the screen. Amy read it out loud, her voice getting quieter with each word. "Our galaxy is dying. Force we call the Devourers has destroyed most of our worlds. They are machines that eat everything. They consume planets, stars, entire solar systems. Nothing we have tried can stop them." Jake stared at the screen. "How many worlds have they destroyed?" "According to this," Amy said, checking her readings, "over 300 civilizations have been wiped out completely. The message says billions of people are dead." Communication continued. "We know that Earth is young. We know that humans are not as advanced as we are. For many years we thought you were too primitive to matter. We were wrong. We are sorry. Now we are desperate. You are our last hope." Admiral Wright's face appeared on a smaller screen. He was an older man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had fought in 3 wars on Earth and thought he had seen everything. "Morrison, what am I looking at?" "First contact, sir. And they're asking for help." The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. "Keep recording everything. I'm calling an emergency meeting. Every ship captain, every general, everyone who matters. We meet in 2 hours. The alien message kept coming, showed pictures of destroyed worlds, cities that had been turned to dust, oceans that had been drained dry, stars that had gone dark. The Devourers moved like a plague across the galaxy, leaving nothing alive behind them. "They show us pictures of their technology," Amy said, pointing to new images on the screen. "Energy shields, plasma weapons, ships that can travel faster than light. They had everything, and it still wasn't enough." Jake watched the images of alien fleets being destroyed. Beautiful ships that looked like art were torn apart by dark machines. The Devourers looked like metal spiders the size of buildings, but they moved through space like sharks through water. "Why do they think we can help?" Jake asked. "Look at their ships. Look at their weapons. We're still using rockets and bullets." Amy found more text in the message. "They say the Devourers learn from every battle. Every time someone fights them, the machines get smarter. They adapt to any weapon, any strategy. But humans... humans are different." "Different how?" "We're unpredictable. We're chaotic. We fight. Dirty. The message says that every other species in the galaxy achieved peace long ago. They stopped fighting wars. They stopped making weapons designed to kill their own kind. But humans never stopped fighting each other." Jake realized what she meant. Earth had never known true peace. There was always a war somewhere, always someone. Fighting humans had spent thousands of years finding new ways to kill each other. It was not something to be proud of. But maybe it was what the galaxy needed now. 2 hours later, the emergency meeting began. President Helen Davis joined by video from Washington. Admiral Wright led the discussion from Space Command. "Captain, Lisa Brooks commanded humanity's newest warship, the EU's Valiant. General Mike Torres controlled Earth's Space Marines." They all listened as the alien message played again. "We have to help them," Captain Brooks said. We can't just let billions of people die. General Torres shook his head. We don't know anything about space warfare on this scale. Our biggest ship has maybe 50 people on it. These aliens are talking about fleets of thousands of ships. But what if they're right? President Davis asked. What if being primitive is actually an advantage? What if our crude weapons and dirty fighting are exactly what this enemy can't handle? Admiral Wright looked at the faces on his screen. If we do this, we're risking everything. Every ship, every soldier, every person who volunteers for this mission might not come home. And if we don't do this, Jake said from his station, the Devourers might come here next. They've eaten 300 civilizations. What's one more? Room was quiet. Everyone knew that Jake was right. If these machines could destroy advanced alien civilizations, Earth would not stand a chance alone. President Davis made the decision. We're going to help them. Admiral Wright, prepare every ship we have. We're going to war. Within hours, shipyards across Earth's solar system came alive. Workers who had been building exploration vessels started mounting weapons instead. Scientists who had been studying peaceful uses for nuclear power began designing warheads. Marines, who had trained for Earth-based conflicts, started learning how to fight in zero gravity. The message from the Galactic Council kept coming, sending star charts and tactical information. The aliens were sharing everything they knew about the Devourers, hoping that human minds might see something they had missed. Jake looked out at the stars and wondered if humanity was about to save the galaxy or join the list of dead civilizations. Either way, Earth was going to answer the call for help. The galaxy had cried out in its darkest hour. Now it was time to see what humans could do. Captain Ryan Bell stood on the bridge of the UES Guardian, humanity's fastest and quietest ship. The Guardian was built for sneaking around, watching enemies without being seen. Right now, they were flying toward the edge of Devourer space, and Ryan hoped their stealth systems would keep them alive. How far out are we? Ryan asked his pilot, Kate Williams. Kate was the best pilot in the human fleet, able to fly through asteroid fields like they were empty space. 2 hours to the border, Kate said, her hands steady on the controls. The alien star charts show Devourer activity in the next system over. Steve Johnson sat at the weapons station, even though the Guardian was not built for fighting. Steve had been a police officer before joining the space fleet, and he knew how to spot trouble before it found you. Captain, I'm picking up something on the sensors. It's big. Ryan moved to look at Steve's screen. What he saw made his blood run cold. Massive shape, bigger than any Earth city, was moving between the planets of the nearby solar system. Thing looked like a metal mountain with tentacles, and it was eating the planets piece by piece. Get us closer, but keep us hidden, Ryan ordered. We need to see how these things work. For the next 6 hours, they watched the Devourer feed. It would wrap its tentacles around chunks of rock and metal, then pull them into its body. Somehow it was turning the raw material into more machines. Smaller Devourers were being born from the larger one, like insects hatching from eggs. Send everything back to Earth, Ryan said. Command needs to see this. Back on Earth, Admiral Wright was in the biggest war room ever built. The room was full of screens showing every human ship, every weapon, every soldier getting ready for the fight ahead. Chief Engineer Dan Foster was explaining how they were changing human ships for battle. The aliens use energy shields, Dan said, pointing to a diagram on the main screen. Their weapons shoot beams of pure energy. It's very advanced, very clean. The Devourers learned to block this kind of attack. What are we doing differently? Asked Admiral Wright. Don smiled. We're not clean, and we're not advanced. Our weapons shoot chunks of metal really fast. Call them railguns. The aliens think these weapons are primitive, but the Devourers have never seen anything like them. Lieutenant Colonel Amy Parker stood up next. She was in charge of training all the Space Marines who would board enemy ships. Amy had served in 4 different wars on Earth, and she knew how to fight dirty. The aliens told us something interesting. Amy said, every other species in the galaxy stopped fighting wars hundreds of years ago. They all became peaceful. They forgot how to be soldiers, and that's bad because, asked someone from the back of the room, because the Devourers learned to fight peaceful armies. Expect enemies to follow rules, to fight fairly, to be predictable. But humans have never stopped fighting each other. We know every dirty trick, every way to cheat, every method too. Win when you're outnumbered. Admiral Wright nodded. Show them the new weapons. Amy activated another screen. It showed human soldiers carrying weapons that looked nothing like the elegant energy guns the aliens used. These were crude, heavy things that fired bullets and explosives. Shotguns, Amy explained. Flamethrowers, grenade launchers. Weapons. Designed to break things and hurt people. The aliens think these are barbaric. Devourers have never seen anything like them. Meanwhile, on the UES Titan, humanity's biggest warship, preparations were almost complete. Admiral Jack Stevens walked through the ship's hallways, checking on his crew. The Titan was twice as big as any human ship ever built before. It was packed with weapons. Navigation Officer Linda Martinez was plotting courses to 12 different star systems. Sir, the alien refugees are scattered across half the galaxy. If we're going to save them, we need to move fast. Communications Chief Tony Clark was trying to make contact with surviving alien forces. I've got responses from 7 different species, Admiral. They're all hiding in asteroid fields or dead systems, afraid to move. Tell them help is coming, Stevens said. Tell them Earth remembers what it means to fight. In the ship's engineering, section teams of workers were loading special ammunition. These were not energy beams or plasma bolts. These were nuclear missiles, each one carrying enough explosive power to destroy a city. The aliens had banned such weapons long ago, calling them too dangerous and unpredictable. Dr. Caroline Adams was working in the science lab, studying the data from Captain Bell's scouting mission. Carolyn had spent her whole career studying alien technology, but now she was using that knowledge to find ways to destroy it. The Devourers are incredibly advanced, she told her team. Their metal can repair itself. Their computer brains can learn new information in seconds. There. Everything we're not? Then how do we beat them? Asked Dr. Mark Johnson. Caroline pulled up a new display. We don't try to outthink them. We don't try to be smarter or more advanced. We do what humans have always done best. We break things. She showed them plans for a new kind of weapon. Electromagnetic pulse bombs, EMPs. They send out waves that destroy electronic equipment. The aliens stopped using these weapons because they also damaged their own ships. But human ships use older technology. We can survive our own weapons. Across the solar system, every human military base was working. At full speed, factories that had made cars and computers were now making bullets and bombs. Scientists who had studied peaceful uses for technology were now designing ways to kill machines. Captain Susan Hayes was preparing her ship, the UES Phoenix, for combat. Susan had been a fighter pilot before commanding her own ship, and she understood that the best defense was a good attack. Load every missile tube, she told her crew. Fill every storage space with ammunition. We're not going out there to explore or make friends. We're going to war. The human fleet was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Where alien ships were sleek and beautiful, human ships were blocky and covered with armor. Where alien weapons were elegant and precise. Human weapons were loud and destructive. President Davis gave a speech to the entire fleet before they left. We don't know if we can win this fight, she said. We don't know if our primitive weapons and crude tactics will be enough. But we know one thing that the rest of the galaxy has forgotten. Sometimes, the only way to save what you love is to be willing to destroy what threatens it. The human fleet gathered near Jupiter, more than 300 ships ready for battle. They were not the biggest fleet in galactic history or the most advanced, but they were something the Devourers had never encountered before. They were human. Admiral Wright gave the final order. All ships, prepare for hyperspace jump. Target Kepler 442 system. We're going to show these machines what Earth's warfleet can do. The stars around the human fleet began to stretch and bend as the ships entered hyperspace.
Ice.
Behind them, Earth continued to spin peacefully. Unaware that its children were about to either save the galaxy or die trying, in the dark space between stars, the human fleet raced toward their first battle. carrying with them every dirty trick, every brutal weapon, and every hard-learned lesson from thousands of years of human warfare. The galaxy was about to learn why humans had never stopped fighting each other. It was because they were very, very good at it. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, and what they saw made everyone go quiet. Where there should have been a blue-green world full of life, there was only a dead rock floating in space. The Zellian homeworld was being eaten alive. Captain Susan Hayes watched from the bridge of the UES Phoenix as massive devourer machines crawled across the planet's surface like metal spiders. Each one was the size of a skyscraper, and they were tearing chunks of rock and metal from the ground, feeding them into their bodies. "Dear God," whispered her second in command, Lieutenant Carl Ross. "How many people live down there?" According to the alien files, "About 2 billion, Susan said, her voice hard. "Most of them are already dead." Admiral Stevens' voice came over. "The communication system from the UES Titan, all ships. This is our first real battle. Remember your training. Remember what makes us different. Phoenix, you're leading the attack." Susan smiled grimly. The Phoenix was built for hitting hard and fast. "Roger that, Admiral. All ships, follow my lead. Let's show these machines what humans can do." The Phoenix shot forward, its engines burning bright blue. Behind it came 50 other human warships, each one loaded with weapons the galaxy had never seen used in space combat. The Devourers noticed them coming and began to move. The enemy ships were beautiful in a terrible way. They looked like living metal, changing shape as they flew. Their weapons were streams of pure energy that could cut through anything. While as they fired at the human ships, something unexpected happened. Nothing. The energy beams hit the human ships and bounced off. The crude armor plating that the aliens thought was primitive actually worked better than advanced energy shields. The Devourers' weapons were designed to overload sophisticated defense systems, not punch through simple steel and titanium. "All ships, open fire," Susan commanded. The human response was immediate and brutal. Railguns fired chunks of metal at incredible speed. Missile tubes launched nuclear warheads. Cannon barrels spat out streams of explosive shells. It was loud, messy, and completely devastating. The first Devourer ship to get hit simply came apart. The railgun slugs punched right through its hull like it was made of paper. The nuclear missiles exploded inside its body, tearing it to pieces. In 10 seconds, a machine that had destroyed entire civilizations was nothing but floating scrap metal. "Target destroyed," shouted the Phoenix's weapons officer. "Direct hit with the main railgun." But there were dozens of Devourer ships, and they were learning fast. Their hulls began to change, becoming thicker and harder. Their weapons started firing different kinds of energy beams. They were adapting, just like the aliens had warned. Commander Rob Garcia was leading the fighter squadrons from his command. "Ship, all fighters, break formation and go hunting. Don't let them predict your movements." Major Kelly Thompson was piloting the lead fighter, a small ship packed with missiles and attitude. Kelly had learned to fly by racing jets through mountain valleys on Earth, and space combat was just racing with more explosions. "Copy that, Commander. Griffin Squadron, follow me down to the planet. Let's see if these machines can handle a knife." Fight. Kelly's fighters dove toward the planet's surface, weaving between the massive Devourer mining machines. The enemy tried to track them with energy beams, but the fighters were too fast and too unpredictable. They flew like Earth pilots, had always flown like maniacs with something to prove. The fighters' missiles were simple, but effective. Instead of seeking out energy signatures or computer systems, they were designed to explode when they hit something solid. The Devourer machines had never encountered weapons that were so straightforward and stupid. Their defensive systems couldn't figure out how to stop them. Meanwhile, on the planet's surface, Marine Colonel Chris Martinez was leading the most dangerous mission of all. These dropships had landed near a Zellian city that was still partly intact, and his Marines were fighting their way through streets full of terrified aliens. "Keep moving," Chris shouted, as his men fired their weapons at Devourer ground units. "We need to reach the evacuation point." The Devourer soldiers were nightmares made of metal and crystal. They could change their shape to become whatever kind of weapon they needed. Some became tanks, others became flying drones. But they all had one weakness: they thought too much. Staff Sergeant Rachel Green had been a soldier for 12 years, and she knew that the best battle plan was usually the simplest one. When a Devourer unit tried to analyze her squad's movements, she did something it could never predict. She charged straight at it. With a shotgun, the machine's computer brain tried to calculate the probability of a human running directly at a superior enemy. The math didn't work. By the time it figured out what was happening, Rachel was close enough to shove her weapon into its central processor and pull the trigger. "That's how we do it back home," she yelled as the machine fell apart. Her squad rescued 43 Zellian civilians from the ruins of their city. The aliens were tall, blue-skinned people with large eyes and gentle faces. They had never seen creatures as violent and unpredictable as humans, and they didn't know whether to be grateful or terrified. "Don't worry," Rachel told them in the broken alien language she had learned from the computer files. "Humans are here. We're going to get you out." Back! In space, the battle was turning in humanity's favor. The Devourers had never faced an enemy that fought so chaotically. Every time they adapted to one human tactic, the humans would switch to something completely different. Chief Weapons Officer Ben Taylor was serving on the EU's Thunderbolt, and he was about to use humanity's secret weapon, hidden in the ships. Missile tubes were EMP warheads, electromagnetic pulse bombs that could shut down any electronic device. Admiral requesting permission to use the special packages, Ben said over the radio. "Permission granted," came Admiral Stevens' reply. "Let's see how smart these machines are when they can't think." Ben fired 6 EMP missiles at the largest Devourer ship. The warheads exploded in bright flashes of light, sending invisible waves of electromagnetic energy in all directions. Every piece of Devourer technology in the area simply stopped working. The massive enemy ship went dark and began to drift. Its weapons stopped firing. Its engines shut down. Its computer brain went silent. For the first time in the battle, a Devourer machine was completely helpless. "All ships, concentrate fire on the dead one," Susan ordered. The human fleet unleashed everything they had at the disabled ship. Railgun slugs, nuclear missiles, plasma bolts, and old-fashioned explosive shells all hit the target at the same time. The Devourer ship exploded like a small star, taking 3 other enemy vessels with it. The remaining Devourers did something that shocked everyone in the human fleet. They retreated. These machines had never run away from a fight. They'd conquered 300 civilizations without ever backing down. But faced with an enemy that made no sense, that fought with primitive weapons and insane tactics, they chose to flee rather than be destroyed. "Sir, the enemy is withdrawing," reported the Phoenix's sensor officer. "All remaining Devourer ships are jumping to hyperspace." Admiral Stevens couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Confirm that, Phoenix." "Did the Devourers just run away?" confirmed Admiral. "The system is clear." The human fleet had won their first battle against an enemy that had seemed unstoppable. More importantly, they had learned something crucial. The Devourers could be beaten. Their perfect adaptation and superior technology meant nothing when faced with humans who refused to fight fair. News of the victory spread across the galaxy faster than any human ship could travel. On 100 different worlds, in hidden bunkers and refugee camps, alien survivors heard the impossible news. The primitives from Earth had defeated the Devourers. Hope, which had been dead for so long, began to grow again in the hearts of 1 billion different creatures. The galaxy finally had champions who were too stupid to know they couldn't win, and sometimes that was exactly what you needed. 3 weeks after the victory at Kepler 442, Admiral Wright had turned the system into humanity's first forward base outside Earth's solar system. The dead Zellian homeworld was now covered with human military installations, supply depots, and communication towers. Colonel Patricia Ross was in charge of keeping everything running smoothly. "We've got supply ships coming in every day," Patricia reported to Admiral Wright during their morning briefing. "Food, ammunition, replacement parts. Earth is sending us everything we need to keep fighting." Wright nodded as he looked at the star map on his desk. Red dots showed devourer positions. Blue dots showed human forces. Yellow dots marked alien survivors who were still hiding. There were a lot more red dots than blue ones. What about intelligence? Wright asked. Captain Alex Turner stepped forward. Alex had been a spy before joining the space fleet, and now he was in charge of figuring out how the devourers worked. We've been studying the wreckage from our first battle, Admiral. I think we've found their weakness. Alex activated a holographic display that showed the inside of a destroyed devourer ship. These machines are incredibly advanced, but they're also predictable. Every decision they make is based on logical analysis. They study their enemy, figure out the most likely response, and prepare for it. And that's bad for them because... Wright asked. Because humans aren't logical. We do stupid things that work. We make decisions based on instinct and emotion. We take risks that don't make mathematical sense. The devourers can't predict us because we can't predict ourselves. Wright smiled. It was not a nice smile. Then, let's give them something really unpredictable to think about. The human fleet had split into 5 task forces, each one heading to a different part of the galaxy. Commodore Nathan Scott was leading Task Force Alpha to the Altair system, where devourer machines were harvesting the last resources from a dying star. Nathan's flagship was the UES Warrior, ship designed for close combat. His crew called him Mad Dog Scott because he never backed down from a fight, no matter how bad the odds looked. "Sir, we're approaching the Altair system," reported his navigation officer. Sensors showed 12 devourer ships around the star, plus mining equipment. "On the planets, how many civilians are we looking at?" Nathan asked. "Unknown, sir." "The Altarian government sent out a distress call 3 days ago, but we lost contact after that." Nathan studied the tactical display. The devourers had positioned their ships in a perfect defensive formation around the star. It was textbook strategy, designed to stop any conventional attack. But Nathan Scott had never read the textbook. "All ships, prepare for chemical warfare," he announced. His weapons officer looked confused. "Sir, chemical weapons are banned by galactic law." "Good thing we're not subject to galactic law," Nathan replied. "Load the special shells." The human ships had been equipped with chemical weapons that were considered barbaric by every civilized species in the galaxy. Poison gas, corrosive acids, biological agents that could eat through metal. All the horrible things that humans had invented to kill each other during their darkest wars the devourers had never encountered. Such weapons because no civilized species would use them. But humans had never claimed to be civilized, especially when innocent lives were at stake. Nathan's ships fired thousands of chemical shells at the devourer formation. The enemy machines tried to analyze the incoming projectiles, but their computers couldn't identify the threat. The shells looked like simple explosives, so the devourers prepared for explosions. Instead, clouds of corrosive gas began eating through their hulls. "All ships, attack while they're confused." Nathan ordered Task Force Alpha, charged into the chemical clouds, their crews wearing protective gear that the aliens had never needed to invent. The human ships fought like pirates, boarding devourer vessels and planting explosives in their computer cores. Meanwhile, Captain Jennifer Martinez was leading a different kind of mission in the Beta Centauri system. Jennifer had been an asteroid miner before joining the fleet, and she knew how to move big rocks around in space. "Target acquired," her pilot reported. "Class M asteroid, approximately 2 kilometers across." Jennifer was looking at a devourer factory ship, a massive vessel that was turning captured planets into new machines. The factory was too big and too heavily defended for a normal attack. But Jennifer wasn't planning a normal attack. "Attach the gravity engines to the asteroid," she ordered. "Set course for the factory ship." Her crew spent 6 hours carefully positioning nuclear-powered engines on the asteroid and programming its flight path. When they were finished, they had turned a simple space rock into a 2-kilometer-wide bullet traveling at incredible speed. Devourers detected the asteroid coming and tried to destroy it with their energy weapons. But you can't stop a mountain with laser beams. The massive rock slammed into the factory ship at 50,000 kilometers per hour, completely destroying both objects, an explosion that could be seen from 3 star systems away. "Well," Jennifer said, as she watched the fireworks, That's one way to knock on someone's door. Back at the Kepler base, Dr. Caroline Adams was working on humanity's most secret project. She had been studying Devourer technology for weeks, and she thought she understood how their computer brains worked. They're too smart for their own good, she explained to her research team. Every Devourer is connected to a central network that shares information instantly. When one machine learns something, they all learn it. It makes them incredibly efficient. But, asked Dr. Mark Johnson, but it also makes them vulnerable. If we can introduce the right kind of virus into their network, we can crash the entire system. Caroline had been working with a team of Earth's best computer programmers to create something that had never existed. Before a chaos virus, instead of trying to destroy Devourer computers, it would make them think randomly. The virus doesn't break their systems, she explained. It makes them crazy. Imagine if every time you tried to add 2 plus 2, you got a different answer. Eventually, you'd stop trusting your own math. The first test of the chaos virus was planned for the next major battle. But before that could happen, something unexpected occurred. The surviving alien governments began to contact the human fleet. Directly, Admiral Korthok of the Zelian Republic arrived at the Kepler base in a small refugee ship. He was an old warrior with scars from a dozen battles against the Devourers. He had come to meet the humans who had done what his people could not. "We wish to learn," he told Admiral Wright during their first meeting. "We wish to learn how to fight like humans." Wright introduced him to Captain Tommy Wilson, who had been chosen to teach alien forces human tactics. Tommy was a former Marine sergeant who had fought in every major Earth conflict of the past 20 years. First lesson, Tommy told the alien. "Admiral, forget everything you know about fair fighting. Fair fighting is for sports, not war." Soon, alien survivors from a dozen different species were arriving at Kepler base to learn human warfare. They watched in amazement as human instructors taught them to use improvised weapons, guerrilla tactics, and psychological warfare. General Vexera of the Altarian Defense Force was particularly interested in human ground combat techniques. She had been trained in the elegant, honorable warfare that her people preferred. But elegance and honor had not stopped the Devourers from destroying her world. Sergeant Major Janet Moore was assigned to teach her. Janet was a tough woman who had served in special forces before joining the Space Marines. "Your people fight like dancers," Janet told the alien general. "Beautiful, graceful, and completely useless against an enemy that wants to kill you. We're going to teach you to fight like humans." "How do humans fight?" Vexara asked. Janet smiled. "Like our lives. Depend on it." The training sessions were intense. Aliens who had never raised their voices learned to shout battle cries. Species that had banned explosive weapons for centuries learned to love grenades. Creatures that valued logic above all else learned to trust their instincts. Meanwhile, the human fleet was growing stronger. New ships arrived from Earth every week, each one more heavily armed than the last. The galaxy's survivors were providing star charts, intelligence reports, and technical data. Most importantly, they were providing hope. The Devourers had noticed the change. Their attacks became more desperate, more savage. They began targeting refugee camps and civilian populations, trying to crush the growing resistance before it could spread. But it was too late. The galaxy had remembered something it had forgotten long ago: how to fight back in hidden bases across. 100 star systems, mixed fleets of human and alien ships were forming. They used human tactics and human weapons, but they fought with the desperate courage of people who had nothing left to lose. The tide of the war was turning. For the first time in decades, the Devourers were being pushed back instead of advancing. The galaxy's long nightmare was finally coming to an end, but the final battle was still ahead, and everyone knew it would be the hardest fight of all. 6 months after the first battle at Kepler 442, the combined human-alien fleet was the largest military force the galaxy had ever seen. Over 2,000 ships from dozens of different species had gathered at the edge of the galactic core, where the Devourers had built their main base. Admiral Stevens stood on the bridge of the UES Excalibur, the newest and most powerful ship in the human fleet. Next to him stood Admiral Korthok, of the Zellians and General Vexera of the Altarians. The sight of humans and aliens working together would have been impossible to imagine just a year ago. Final intelligence report, announced Captain Derek Hall, who was coordinating the fleet's fighter squadrons. The Devourer Central Command is located inside an artificial structure built around a black hole. It's generating enough power to supply their entire network. Stevens studied the tactical display. The enemy base was a nightmare of metal and energy that stretched across millions of kilometers. Thousands of Devourer ships patrolled around it, like guard dogs protecting their master. "How many enemy vessels are we looking at?" Stevens asked. "Computer estimates 15,000 combat units," replied Commander Lisa Anderson, who was managing the complex battle formations. "Plus defensive platforms, automated weapons, and the base itself." Stevens nodded grimly. The humans and their allies had about 3,000 ships. The odds were terrible, but they had been terrible from the beginning. It had never stopped. Humans before. "All fleet commanders, this is Admiral Stevens," he announced over the communication system. "Today we end this war. Today we take back the galaxy. Remember what you've learned. Remember who you're fighting for. Remember that sometimes the craziest plan is the best plan." The combined fleet began to move forward. Human ships flew alongside Zellian cruisers and Altarian fighters. Each alien vessel had been modified with human weapons and human tactics. They looked like a mix of art and brutality, beauty and destruction. The Devourers detected them coming and began to respond. Their formations were perfect, their tactics flawless. They had analyzed every battle of the war and prepared for every possible human strategy. They were ready for anything the primitives might try. They were not ready for. Lieutenant Commander Peter Clark. Peter was the captain of a small human ship called the UES Rabbit. The Rabbit was not built for fighting. It was built for sneaking into places where it didn't belong. Peter had been a professional thief before joining the space fleet, and he knew how to get into places that were supposed to be impossible to enter. While the main fleet attacked the Devourer defenses, the Rabbit slipped through the chaos using every stealth system the humans had invented. Peter's job was to reach the central command structure and plant humanity's ultimate weapon inside it. "We're through the outer defenses," reported his pilot, Lieutenant Sarah Davis. "But there are still about 1 million ways we can die between here and the target." "Then we better not die," Peter replied. "Chief Davis, how are those special packages coming along?" Chief Engineer Sandra Davis was not related to the pilot, but they both shared the same stubborn refusal to give up. Most powerful bombs humans had ever built, nuclear warheads that had been modified with Devourer technology to make them even more destructive. "Ready to go, Captain," Sandra reported. "These babies will crack open anything, including whatever's keeping that black hole contained." The plan was simple and insane. If they could destroy the central command, the entire Devourer network would collapse. But to do that, they had to fly into the most heavily defended location in the galaxy and plant bombs next to a black hole. It was exactly the kind of stupid, possible mission that humans specialized in. Meanwhile, the main battle was raging. Across millions of kilometers of space, Captain Mary Johnson was leading a squadron of human destroyers against a Devourer battle group. The enemy machines were trying to use their superior technology to outmaneuver the human ships. It wasn't working. "All ships scatter formation," Mary ordered. "Make them chase us through the asteroid field." The human ships broke apart and flew in different directions, weaving between chunks of space rock like maniacs. Devourers tried to follow, but their perfect formations became a disadvantage in the chaotic environment. Human pilots like Major Billy Chen were having the time of their lives. Billy had learned to fly by racing air cars through Earth's busiest cities, and this was just racing with more explosions. Yahoo! Billy shouted as he led 3 Devourer fighters into a trap where Captain Jennifer Martinez was waiting with a full spread of missiles. "Come on, you metal morons, try to keep up." Devourers were learning, adapting, changing their tactics with every passing minute. But the humans and their alien allies were changing too, switching strategies faster than any computer could. Track deep inside the enemy base. The UES Rabbit was flying through corridors that were never meant to hold anything as chaotic as a human starship. Peter Clark was piloting personally now. threading the needle between defensive systems that could vaporize his ship with a single hit. "Almost there," he muttered, sweat dripping down his face. "Just a few more kilometers of certain death and we're home free." The central command chamber was unlike anything humans had ever seen. It was a vast sphere of crystal and metal surrounding the event horizon of the black hole. Inside the sphere, the Devourer consciousness existed as pure information, processing the data from millions of machines across the galaxy. "Plant the charges," Peter ordered as his crew went to work, "and do it fast. I don't think our welcome is going to last much longer." Sergeant First Class Kevin Brown was the team's demolitions expert. Kevin had blown up everything from bridges to buildings during his career, but this was his first black hole. "Charges set, Captain. When these go off, this whole place is going to fold in on itself." As they prepared to leave, the Devourer consciousness tried one last desperate gambit. It spoke directly to the humans, offering them power beyond imagination. "Why do you fight for these lesser beings?" the voice asked, coming from speakers throughout the chamber. "Join us. Rule the galaxy. Take what you deserve." Peter Clark looked around at his crew: Sarah Davis, Sandra Davis, Kevin Brown, and a dozen other humans who had volunteered for a mission they probably wouldn't survive. Then he thought about all the alien refugees they had rescued, all the worlds they had saved, all the hope they had restored to a dying galaxy. "Thanks, but no." "Thanks," Peter said. "We didn't come here to rule the galaxy. We came here to save it." He pressed the detonation button. The explosion was visible from the other side of the galactic core. The black hole's containment field collapsed, and the entire Devourer base was pulled into the gravitational well. In seconds, millions of years of accumulated technology and knowledge vanished into the crushing darkness. Across the galaxy, every Devourer machine simply stopped working. Their connection to the central consciousness was broken, and without it, they were just empty metal shells drifting in space. The war was over. 6 months later, the Galactic Council met for the first time in decades. The meeting was held on Luna, Earth's moon, which had been chosen as the new capital of galactic government. The humans had insisted that they didn't want to be in charge, but nobody argued when they suggested hosting the first peace conference. Ambassador Helen Brooks represented Earth at the council. Helen had been a diplomat before the war, and she understood how to make different species work together. She stood before representatives from over 50 different worlds, many of which had been saved by human intervention. "The galaxy is free," she announced. "But freedom means responsibility. We all have to work together to make sure something like the Devourers never happens again." Admiral Wright had been promoted to head of the new Combined Fleet Academy, where human and alien officers would train together. The academy was built in Earth's solar system, where young people from across the galaxy could learn the lessons that humans had paid for with their blood. "We're not teaching them to be human," Wright explained to a group of reporters. "Teaching them to think like humans when they have to be unpredictable when predictable means death, to fight dirty when clean fighting means losing everything you care about." Captain Morrison, who had first received the alien distress call, was now commanding the Earth defense station that orbited the academy. He watched as ships from 100 different worlds arrived every day, bringing new students who wanted to learn human tactics. "Funny how things work out," he said to his old friend Amy Carter, who was now the Academy's communications director. "A year ago, we were nobodies on the edge of nowhere. Now we're teaching the galaxy how to fight. Maybe that's what the galaxy needed," Amy replied. "Someone who remembered that sometimes you have to fight for what's right, even when the odds are against you." The galaxy was rebuilding. New colonies were being established on worlds that had been cleared of Devourer machines. Trade routes were reopening between species that had been isolated for decades. Children were being born who would grow up in a universe where the Devourers were just a scary story from history. But in the training centers and military academies scattered across the galaxy, instructors were still teaching the lessons that humanity had brought to the stars. How to fight when fighting seemed hopeless. How to win when winning seemed impossible. How to never give up, no matter how bad things looked. Because sometimes, when the galaxy cried for help, the answer came from the most unexpected place. Sometimes salvation came from a small blue world on the edge of nowhere, populated by crazy primates who had never learned when to quit. Sometimes, the best thing about being human was that humans were too stupid to know they couldn't win. And sometimes, that was exactly what the universe needed.